Do me a favor. Who has him in our league? Can you look that up real quick for me? I forget who has him in our league.
There's no need.
Do you know who?
Where are you in the standings at the
So you're
moment?
scrapping for a playoff spot.
That's not true.
Clawing in the dirt.
At the end of this week, I'm going to be tied for, I think, first or second.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
What, are you falling off
Your
a
team's
cliff
terrible.
first?
His team is getting slapped around like a grape this week.
Wasn't really following what was happening on Thanksgiving, and then the morning after I checked, I was down 77-0. It's like, all right, I'm probably going to lose this week.
Yeah. His grapes got slapped. You have no idea.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Shout out to all the grape slappers out there. Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher.
Yeah.
I was lying. Matthew's not scrapping for a playoff spot.
It's really annoying.
He's confidently in.
I much preferred season 1 of this show when your team sucked and you were in like 10th.
Well, what happens is when you actually tell me the rules and we don't have to restart the draft over and all the different things that went around in year 1. There was a bunch of malfeasance and skullduggery that went around. It was not a tightly run ship. But now it is. We got producer Damien in charge of the league, and the trains run on time. Everyone knows what the rules are.
Devoured.
And so you see here's our standings, and as predicted, I'm in second place. I have the second highest score in the league. And so George the Geek is in first place. He's the 19th hole, but there's me in second place, live at noon on the cock. I've clinched a playoff spot. I'm 8-5, but I have the second most points in the league. The Grape Slappers. Jay is you're in third, but it hasn't been your week.
No. My team's a disaster. It's all fallen apart. We built this beautiful palace, and now the palace has been ransacked by thieves. So why isn't Cooper Kupp good anymore? What happened to him? Christian McCaffrey, gone. Jordan Mason, gone. At one point, I had Guerendo on my team as well. I'm counting on Mac Jones starting this week.
That's good.
I might start Mac
You
Jones.
confident in Russell Wilson to keep up his fantasy barrage?
I don't know. I don't like any of this. Joe Mixon on bye. Joe Mixon, come off bye. Come back.
If only Joe Mixon can get
Might be
released.
playing me in the wild card.
But anyway, Jay, you had a big game this week, but you lost to Big Show in a significant way.
There he is.
And there he is, Big Show, drinking grape juice because he basically what he did is he took the grapes of yours and he crushed them.
Yes.
He crushed your grapes.
Yes.
And there he
is, live in action,
still
drinking
there he
it.
is, still enjoying it. There he is. Chris Lee's our show researcher. Everyone calls him Big Show as he enjoys his freshly squeezed grapes because he crushed you. And that the grape juice comes out when you crush the grapes.
Yeah, we're going to be very careful with him drinking my grape juice in this metaphor. But he crushed me. It was a monstrous performance. He put up around 170 points. It was just done after Thanksgiving. That's the beauty sometimes of having these weeks where you have a lot of early games, where it's like, oh, I'm just done. I'm just done after Thursday. Just don't have to worry about it. Move on to next week.
It's a man starting Cooper Rush, by the way. If you're wondering how diabolical the League of Assholes is. He's mowing everyone down.
I have to. I don't know that I have somebody to waive this week because I have both Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito, and I have to see who the Giants are rolling out there because I have Jaden Daniels on a bye this week as well. So I mean, it's just looking for anyone with a pulse. But we're going to get to waivers and a crazy Monday Night Football game here in a second, plus of course future bets for you. But take a quick look at our. We have a full screen here of what everyone needs, right? Do we not? Or no, we're just going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it, right?
All right, we're going to talk
so
about
this
it.
is
I sort of pay attention to the show.
You were close enough.
I sort of pay attention to the
custom full
stuff.
screen with scenarios. You're asking a lot of producer Pete.
Sorry, back to producer Pete.
This is NFL Week 18.
Anyway, where's Steve Kornacki to break it all down for
board.
us? Here's what happens. Connor, you are playing backup producer Pete, and it is win
and get in. Simple as that.
Or go home. So you see there, Deet Pamelidis. Pete Damelidis is his name. His team name, Deet Pamelidis. He is 6-7. Connor at Fantasy Life Commenter is 7-6. Winner gets in, loser goes home. If I beat, I play
Denny.
I play Denny, and if I beat Denny, I get a bye, assuming Jay doesn't outscore me by 44 points. Jay, you get a bye with you have to beat Damien, plus George has to lose against Adam, who's down there at the end, and I have to lose to Damien, or you have to outscore me by 44 points. None of those seem particularly likely.
That's okay.
You're counting on Denny and the analytics. to bring you home there. Lawrence lost a tough one, like on the last second there. And I'm sure we'll discuss that Wednesday.
Yeah. Love a good win and get in game, Connor. Just remember, if it's close to the end, just do not throw a screen past the Tyler Goodson. Yes. You cannot have that in a win and get in game. It didn't work last year for Shane Steichen, and it won't work for you either.
I woke up, got a head start on waivers, which we're going to help you out with all of that in just a second. I was not feeling good. Nico Collins is on a bye. Good. Lovely. Baker Mayfield's banged up. And then I looked at Pete's lineup, and I encourage everybody in our league to make your waiver claims this week, because if you do, I don't think Pete can field a full lineup. If Vlad McConkey does not play, which that's shaky right now, Pete has like 3 bye weeks, 4 injuries. This could be a 90 to 85 kind of finish here. Yeah. It's disgusting.
You're going to kind of grind out a win there as well. It's a brutal week. 6 teams are on a bye. I know personally I have Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and Derrick Henry on a bye for my team. So I'm no sure thing against Denny this week at all. So there you were still very much alive for a bye.
Yes, and also, by the way, Connor, one of the great used car salesmen, he's just been selling me lemons all year. J.K. Dobbins, no good. Cooper Kupp, no good anymore. It's ridiculous. Meanwhile, he's stockpiling my sweet quarterbacks.
Yeah. Jay's farm system restored me.
Apparently I'm the Oakland Athletics and he's the New York Yankees over here. It's very
Basically, that's exactly what is happening. So we'll keep you updated on the league, but a lot of drama and the group chat on fire as it was.
Let's jump in to waivers, because everybody needs help, and a hell of a day for producer Pete to be on the comms here, because he's listening intently. Here's the notable running backs on a bye for week 14, and these are big ones. Joe Mixon, sorry Jay, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Brian Robinson, who had a really good week, Ramondre Stevenson, Javonte Williams, and even obviously this includes the Broncos backup running backs as well. So a lot of big names here, Matthew.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that you're dealing with some injuries as well, right? You mentioned J.K. Dobbins. You don't feel good about any of the Chargers running backs here, and so you don't feel good about the Raiders running back situation.
Breece Hall is banged up.
Breece Hall is banged up as well. So it is an ugly, ugly week as well. And Jay, I want to take a moment here just to talk about you, because I think you can really help the mindset of the fantasy football manager for people out there in leagues. I'd like to just sort of know for you, Jay, what's the mindset of a fantasy manager who drafted Chris McCaffrey?
Oh my God!
And then did the smart thing, and then took the precaution in the preseason of drafting his backup Jordan Mason. Not everyone was able to do that. Jordan Mason, wasn't rostered by every single Chris McCaffrey manager as well, right? And you wisely avoided Elijah Mitchell. But here you sit on the precipice of the playoffs, and you don't have Chris McCaffrey or Jordan Mason, and Isaac Guerendo is a free agent in a league in where there are no free agents.
Yes.
How are you feeling today?
You have dollars, though.
I do have a lot of dollars to spend. Well, 2 things. One, I'm not sure what's going on with this next situation. What are we in Athens? Is this the European summer? What the hell's going on here?
I don't know. It's I don't know. I got to talk to Stephanie in wardrobe.
That's the first thing.
But
the second thing.
I like that you were distracted.
So here's the thing with Guerendo. Yeah. So I think it was Ian Hardert who tweeted you drafted Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. You didn't think to draft Isaac Guerendo as well. You're an idiot. Well, here's the thing.
The backup of the backup. You should have drafted the backup of the backup.
He was on my team at one point. I had all 3 of them on my roster, and then McCaffrey comes back. It's like, oh great, I can drop Isaac Guerendo, and now I'm gonna have to spend all my fab to get him. Here's the honorable thing. You guys should just let me pick him up. You should let me pick him up.
We're going
to. I will instead of Pete getting him.
I'm gonna. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm absolutely put in a $0 bid. Don't worry about it. I'm making this decree. No one in the league make a bid on Guerendo. He's yours for free.
Okay.
Go ahead. Put in a $0 bid. He's yours. I promise you. Don't worry.
Do I have the most fab of anyone? I might just be able to be in control of this situation.
We'll find out as you look that up. In case you missed this news, Chris McCaffrey, I think it's a torn PCL, right?
Yeah, it's a PCL injury that they're saying might not need surgery. But the bottom line is
he's done for the year.
Irrelevant in fantasy right now.
He's officially placed on IR. It's a 6-week recovery time. We are not going to see Chris McCaffrey in the regular season for fantasy football again this year. If you are in a redraft league, you are welcome to drop him. Jordan Mason also gets placed on IR. He's going to be out for at least the minimum of 4 games. And so you sort of sit there and you do the math. Week 14, week 15, week 16, week 17. Maybe he comes back in week 18. But if you play in a league where the playoffs are in week 18, are you really going to trust Jordan Mason in a game that probably isn't going to matter to the 49ers in his first game back? I think it's unlikely that we see Jordan Mason do anything in fantasy this year as well. Yep. And it does look like you'll see some Patrick Taylor for the 49ers as well, and they might sign another body. But ultimately, it looks like the starting running back for the Niners this week will be Isaac Guerendo, and he's available in a ton of leagues out there, 92% of Yahoo leagues, including our league, because Jay dropped the backup of his backup. He's had 3 different games this year, guys, with double-digit offensive snaps, at least 10 offensive snaps, and he's averaging over 12 fantasy points per game. He's averaging almost 6 yards per carry this season. All right, and over the last 4 weeks, he plays Chicago this week. Over the last 4 weeks, Bears allowing over 128 rushing yards per game, giving up almost 5 yards per carry to running backs as well. Isaac Guerendo is the number 1 pickup this week as well. And I will say this. It's week 14. A lot of people out there in Connor's situation. You have to win or your season is over. A lot of people out there in the situation of Jay, where you had McCaffrey and or Jordan Mason, you don't have Guerendo. I am spending all of my. You don't have to. You're safe. I promise you.
I just
Jay,
put in a $79 bid.
No,
Isaac Guerendo, so
fine.
it's done. He's my player now.
No, it's fine. You $0. Save your $79. But everyone else, I would blow the budget on Isaac Guerendo.
I think you just got to spend everything, right?
I think you have to spend everything.
Yeah,
I just don't know that
do.
you're going. I don't know that there's at this point of the season. I don't know that there's going to be another player that becomes available that has the potential impact of Guerendo that's available, that's as widely available as him.
Yeah. Well, last night after I saw the Jordan Mason news, which that one snuck by me. I didn't realize that was the thing, and then all of a sudden I see Jordan Mason's done and it's on IR as well. All right, great.
It was a surprise.
And so in a fit of fury, I was just like, all right, how much fab do I have? I'm just going to spend it all of it, every single dollar. $83 on Isaac Guerendo. Turns out no one has more than $78, so I've revised that bid down to $79. But I think you're not going to get any better than this. He's the starting running back on the 49ers. They're still going to be playing to win for the time being. So I agree. Blow the budget, just as I did.
Wisely. He's
Wisely.
yours.
You know what's upsetting?
The Guerendo is
if
yours.
Jay had the day off, he wouldn't have paid attention. He'd have been making moves in our basketball league,
Yeah,
and
fair.
Guerendo would have gone through for like $5 or $6.
Like Brandon Pajemski.
Yeah, exactly.
Alas.
Alas.
Guerendo is
Be
mine.
saved. All right, our next running back here, and things are shallow right now. Let's be real.
Dude.
But Jonathan Brooks, he's 51% available, so he just meets our threshold here. He's got the Eagles, of course, which is a tough matchup, Matthew. But the most important thing is he did get 9 touches. This is somebody that started out the year on IR. The talented rookie, they're working him in this Panthers offense.
Played only 14 snaps, but touched the ball 9 times, as you mentioned, Connor, on those 14 snaps. Got 3 targets. They were using him in the passing game. Also, 2 goal-to-go rushing attempts. As somebody who has Chuba Hubbard and got killed in a guillotine league because, we were down to the final 5, and Hubbard, with his under 3 fantasy points, just a brutal game from Hubbard against the Buccaneers. Remember, Hubbard also lost that fumble in overtime. It was one of the reasons why that the Buccaneers were able to get that game-winning field goal. And so, look, Hubbard got paid, and he's been so good all year long, but clearly they want to get Jonathan Brooks more involved. His usage from last week increased from the week before. You have to expect it gets up even more. Don't love the matchup against Philadelphia, and I'm still going to have Hubbard ranked over Brooks this week, but Brooks is obviously going to have a role in this offense, and talented player who has a role. And at this stage of the season, it was 6 teams on a bye. Like, that's enough. Just having a pulse.
Yeah, and the thing is that the Panthers are 12-point dogs in this game. So the answer here between these two guys may come down to just who is going to be the PPR scam artist as they're playing catch-up mode in the second half. I think that might be Jonathan Brooks.
That's why they drafted him.
Yeah.
I mean, be a pass-catching back, get him in space, use his explosiveness. The fact he played 14 snaps, but he had 3 targets.
Yeah.
And he caught all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Like, you get a little bit more on the plate. Say the snaps go from 14 to, God, can we get 20 out of you? And you do catch 5 passes
20,
in a
25,
chasing point script. Then he's viable in a week where everybody's really desperate at this position right now. So, all right, guys, here's the must-roster insurance.
And by the way, you
running
could
backs.
see that increasing. Again, we're also looking towards the fantasy playoffs as well. And,
Right.
there's a chance that the Panthers just go with a full youth movement. It does still – paying Hubbard still is one of the weird – again, he's been great, and you want to reward guys who've been great, but it does feel like just a weird misallocation of resources that you use Brooks was a second-rounder, right?
Yeah.
It's a weird one.
Yeah. But to be fair, it wasn't as bad as the Falcons and what they did with their allocation of resources at the quarterback position. But yeah, just a little strange one that went under the radar.
Yeah.
But only thing that
By the way, maybe not, because Kirk Cousins has been brutal. People are calling for Michael Penix to start, and I think if Cousins has another bad game, I think that's a real conversation. Because if you look at what Kirk Cousins has done in games in which he's not playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he's been bad.
Yeah.
The eye test, like physically, there's nothing.
He just can't move. He
nothing
feels like
left.
he can't step into these throws.
Right, and you see the ball just kind of float.
Yeah.
When Penix goes, I can't imagine what it looks like in practice. When Penix throws like a deep out and then Cousins throws a deep out, it's like a Nerf ball compared to like a pea shooter.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Now he gets Brian Flores' defense, so it's not.
They're not going to throw Penix to the Wolves like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it could end badly.
But
all right.
at any rate,
Here's the must-roster insurance running backs. That top one becomes much more interesting this week, Matthew, as Breece Hall is dealing with a knee injury. His snap count was obviously down last week in Seattle. So Braelon Allen, 68% out there. There's a world where Braelon Allen is starting during the fantasy playoffs. Zach Charbonnet scored the touchdown last week against the Jets.
oh, I'm aware.
Yeah. Did that hurt?
Super bit. Well, it's just
I know
we,
the Ken-
we,
It
had
hurt
Ken,
America.
we had Ken.
Yeah.
It hurt America because we had hit 3 legs of our touchdown parlay bet, and Ken Walker should have gotten that touchdown, but instead they give it to stupid Zach Charbonnet.
And the Jets actually had like 8 goal line stand plays for the first time
For
in
the
their
first
entire
time all
season.
year.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Tough betting year for Matthew with the Seahawks between Tyler Lockett Gate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Our various losing bets on JSN. We've had a good betting year, but JSN has really screwed us across the board
Yeah,
until
I
finally
gotta
breaking
avoid
down
the
now. Ken Walker.
Seahawks. I've been good with pretty much every other team.
Tyler Algier.
The Niners have
the Niners
effed me a
screwed
couple
it.
of times as well with the injuries to Mason and McCaffrey.
Tajay Spears, Ray Davis, Blake Corum, who's getting a little bit more work now for the Rams, Roshan Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell, Jalen Wright, who's taken on a larger role as Raheem Mostert started to go down, although that one's a little bit more tricky, and Trey Benson.
I will also, by the way, again, James Conner has missed time pretty much every year of his career. Hasn't yet this season.
Right.
So Trey Benson's really interesting to me just because if you look at the Cardinals' upcoming playoff schedule, it's ridiculous. It's really nice. You got the Panthers in there. They got the Patriots as well.
Seahawks aren't scary.
Yeah, I mean, so just there's a scenario, again, you never root for injury. You don't even want to predict injury, but there's a scenario where James Conner could get banged up and Benson ends up helping in your playoffs in a significant way down the stretch. But I think more importantly than this is, we've talked about this a lot, and with 6 teams on a bye, you may not have this luxury because you may be in a situation like, I don't know, Connor, where you desperately have to win this week or your season's over. No big deal. I mean, you and I are playing next. You and I are playing in
Just
week
playing for
15.
seeding.
Right now, Jay and I are just figuring out what our seeding is. You know, it's just we're just rearranging the deck chairs. You're like
Bills and Chiefs over here, Colts over there.
yeah, pretty much.
Very disrespectful. I have a winning record.
Anyway,
This will be remembered.
Colts-ish. But anyway, should we call him Anthony Richardson over here?
CR5.
Yeah.
I think our third host tomorrow would prefer that title.
fair.
Mr. Anthony Richardson.
Yeah. But all I was going to say is that I think so you may not have this luxury this week to just stock up on backup running backs, but I do think it is important. And you're right. I don't know what's going on with this one collar. This one, I got to talk to Stephanie.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's just whatever.
Vacation in Milan.
Yeah, just a little bit. Hey, what's going on? Get you a drink? Like, yeah, that's right.
Detonate this
I'm the
ISO.
divorced dad at the bar. What's going on? Hey, who's ready to party?
Luigi
All right.
meets Borat meets
Yeah, exactly.
single man.
It's scary. It's very scary. My poor wife. You don't understand how lucky I am and how unfortunate my wife's life is. Anyway, look, back to backup running backs. All I'm saying here is that what you want is to protect what you have. Because if you are going into the playoffs, if you are similar to Jay and myself, and you know what you have, right? You're sure to play in the postseason. You obviously have a pretty good team if you're heading into the postseason, and so you just want to kind of make sure you protect that production. We have too short a season here to be like, oh, I'll just take a flyer on Trey Benson and hope that James Conner gets hurt, right? I would much rather take Trey Benson if I have James Conner, or Blake Corum if I have Kyron Williams, on, Ray Davis if I have James Cook, just because you want to make sure you lock in that production. If you have an extra roster spot, then sure, take a flyer on one of these backup running backs. But I feel like the season's getting shorter, and the chances of one of those guys popping in a way that like Guerendo is likely to is small. And so you'd much rather just be rest assured that, hey, your team is what it is at this point, and I just want to, ride who got me there.
Yeah, I think the thing is too is like you're thinking about purely who is going to be in my starting lineup in the playoffs. It's like, what's the point of picking up like Tyler Lockett. Like Tyler Lockett's probably just not going to be, he's not going to feature.
Yeah.
Like if you're starting Tyler Lockett, you're probably screwed anyway. So just try and fortify strength and go for upside.
Yeah, and by the way, once you get past and start looking ahead to the playoffs in terms of what are the weeks, and like to your point, like if I've got Tyler Lockett on my team, like Tyler Lockett's never starting for me in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And if I get so many injuries during the playoffs that I need to start Tyler Lockett, he or similar production will be available on the waiver wire. So get rid of those guys. You don't need 2 kickers, right? You don't need 2 defenses. You don't need 2 tight ends. Sort of lock in your starting lineup and go from there. And then your bench is literally just about like if something happens to one of my guys, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So let's move over to the wide receivers. This is a little bit a better group than what we've dealt with running back, although not great. Now here's the notable wide receivers and tight ends with the bye week. We mentioned Nico Collins, Terry McLaurin coming off a phenomenal week, Courtland Sutton, who has been so consistent for the last 2 months.
See Sutton.
Josh Downs is still hurt. It's it's not definite that he's back after the bye. So keep an eye on his injury status. Zay Flowers, Michael Pittman Jr., Tank Dell, Mark Andrews, who's really turned the corner the last couple of weeks. Our favorite player on waiver wire is Hunter Henry.
Yeah,
sorry, not this week. He graduated.
Tuesday, a Hunter Henry free Tuesday. He was tight at 9 last week. We talk about him every single week.
He's viable every week on
every
waivers.
single week, and no one wants to pick him up.
So with that,
but anyway, a lot of big name pass catchers on a bye this week.
And we start with the Panthers, and that starts with Adam Thielen. Now, this is a tough matchup against the Eagles. We expect him to be chasing points. Adam Thielen's available in 68% of leagues here, Jay. Xavier Legette in 73%. But the best news of this is that Bryce Young has just looked so much better the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he looks like a very solid quarterback, fulfilling that kind of potential where I think the upside case for Bryce Young at some point became like Chiefs Alex Smith, and that's kind of the role that he's fulfilling. He looks mobile, he looks a lot more confident in the pocket. Earlier in the season, it's like he would stare down a pass rusher and then just take the sack. Now he's actually moving around, he's creating on the move. And Thielen, he already had the connection with Thielen last year, and Thielen just has been injured and been in and out of the lineup, and so they seem to have that connection again. So Adam Thielen, he is what looks like a wide receiver 1 for a now competent NFL quarterback.
No question about it. The argument against Thielen in the preseason is like, well, he's old and this guy gets injured a lot. But
Deontay Johnson.
Right, yeah, exactly. And Deontay Johnson. But Deontay Johnson is gone. Like, literally gone. I don't even know if the Ravens know where he is. I don't know. That's one of the most bizarre stories of the season, by the way, that Deontay Johnson goes from having like a 30% target share to
barely in the league.
Or to be traded for only to be like, hey, is he handing out towels in the locker room? I don't know what he does on the Ravens anymore.
I just feel like he's going to get cut and be on the Lions or something in 2 weeks. I have no idea what's happening.
It's super weird, but that was the anti-Adam Thielen argument in the preseason. But now, by the way, healthy, so he missed a lot of time, so not really worried as much about sort of wear and tear at this stage of his career. And to your point, this is somebody who last year with Bryce Young was a fantasy starter for much of the year and had a 24% target share last week, right? Got 10 targets, 9 of them came in the slot. He's had at least 1 end zone target in 3 straight games. That one-handed catch to keep the drive alive against the Buccaneers was unbelievable as well. Now they're at Philadelphia this week. You obviously don't love that matchup, but to the point, there could be some junk time here. They try to maybe move him around, veteran wide receiver for him. And yes, Bryce has looked good. Some of the other pass catchers on the Panthers we should mention. Xavier Legette has a 19% target share of his last 5 games. He's obviously a nice red zone target, especially with Jatavian Sanders not going to be there for the Panthers as well. David Moore has had back-to-back games with at least 5 receptions. And hopefully Jalen Coker. Us cokeheads desperate for his return. I need him in our league. He's starting for me against Denny.
Really itching for his return.
Yes.
I'm desperate for his return. I'm desperate for his
scratch your neck,
his
Matthew.
return.
You got a lot of it to say.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, but Thielen would be our number 1 choice here as well. He's available in almost 70% of Yahoo leagues.
Our next receiver is Cedric Tillman, who didn't play last night because of the concussion. But typically, Jay, we don't see guys linger in concussion protocol multiple weeks, especially receivers after one kind of hit. When Tillman did play with Jameis, things were looking good in this Browns offense.
Yeah, so hopefully he will be back. We'll get more into the Jameis experience, but the Jameis experience obviously involves a lot of passing yards, a lot of passes. The Browns just can't run the ball whatsoever, so they're needing to throw. And Tillman, I get that on paper the Steelers looks like a scary matchup, but the Steelers' pass defense isn't infallible. Their corner situation isn't amazing. They have a great pass rush, and they've been very solid in run defense, but they can be exploited. So Cedric Tillman, certainly one of the more appetizing names on this list.
Yeah, and they'll be underdogs in that game at Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And Elijah Moore may be viable
dogs
as well, Matthew, especially in PPR formats where he typically can grab you a couple catches, even if it's underneath stuff.
Jameis Winston's made 5 starts. Elijah Moore has got at least 16 fantasy points in 3 of them. Now, obviously, Tillman's missed a couple of those, but still, Elijah Moore looked pretty good last night. What a nutty game. We'll get into that as well. But Club said with a 22% target share in the 4 games prior to suffering the concussion, we like him from a talent perspective. My question, Connor, in a win or get in game for the Fantasy Life commenter squad, Club said in your lineup?
Absolutely. The faith is real. I'm going to start him over Xavier Legette.
Okay.
I don't like Legette against Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah, fair.
I just think he can get erased. That's a bad matchup for him. So if he clears concussion protocol, which we all think he will, I'll be playing him over Legette in my flex.
There you go. There you go.
So, all right, our next. This is a favorite of the show. NWI, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine,
There you go.
has just been a touchdown machine, and he might really play a big factor in fantasy playoff seeding because he's got Jacksonville this week, Matthew. He's 82% available. He's getting more targets, finally, from Will Levis.
Since week 6, no player in the NFL has more receiving touchdowns than NWI. He's tied for the NFL lead. He's got 8 since week 6. Quietly a 20% target share in 4 of the past 5 games. At least a 20% target share. So the Titans haven't always been super pass happy, but when they are throwing, they're at least giving some looks to Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. And I was happy to see last week, like, again, it was bad, negative game script, so it was good for NWI, but like Levis was throwing a lot. He got, I think, 8 targets last week as well. And you mentioned the matchup with Jacksonville as well. Jags allow the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers on a points per game basis, and there's some Favre in Will Levis. There's some fearlessness there. Like, he'll chuck it whenever, which you kind of love. And so it's basically him and Ridley. It's really the only 2 guys in a team that's going to be throwing quite a bit against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Some injury-based ads with the Chargers here. Quentin Johnston, 58% available. Josh Palmer, 85% available against the Chiefs. Jay, this one largely depends on the status of Ladd McConkey, who has the knee injury. He left the game, and didn't come back into the game against the Falcons. And Jim Harbaugh, all we got right now is he'll be evaluated as the week goes on. But the fact he didn't come back into the game when he was tearing up the Falcons is not the best sign.
Yeah, particularly because it was a close game and they needed them in the second half. So that is a concern. And then also, the Chiefs' defense, like, if you have any kind of latent idea that this is the same unit that it was last year, no, this is not a good pass defense at the moment. Really missing Jalen Watson, really missing L'Jarius Sneed, who left in the offseason, obviously. So this is a pass funnel defense. It's a team that you can throw on. And look, they're 3.5-point dogs in prime time. Suspect that they're going to need to throw the Chargers. And if Ladd McConkey's not there, it's Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, and Will Dissly. There's not much else.
Our stash mention here, Hollywood Brown, 82% available, waiting for the return of Hollywood Brown as a stash option, Matthew. If you have that kind of roster flexibility this late in the year?
I guess you'd have to be in a pretty deep league. Like, he's expected to return to practice in week 15, could play in week 16. Given how much they spread the ball around, and like, you're in the middle of fantasy playoffs, so you're really going to risk it. You're going to want to see it, right? So if he's playing in week 16, you're not going to, unless you're truly desperate, you're not going to throw him out there. You're going to want to see it first. So now it's week 17, and are you really starting Hollywood Brown in your fantasy finals after only 1 game? Again, because, it's the Chiefs where you're just like, oh, here's 2 touchdowns to Noah Gray. Oh, he doesn't get any looks the next week. They're so, sort of like just, I don't know. I get it, right? He's a big name, talented player, and the Chiefs offense, if you're on the field with Patrick Mahomes, good things can happen. But practically speaking, I'd have to be in a super deep league.
Much more football relevant and playoffs relevant than fantasy statistical accumulation relevant.
Some more deep league wide receiver.
But we wanted to mention it just to be comprehensive.
Waiver targets. Parker Washington after his best game, and obviously the fact that he can play the slot. Mac Jones target, 99% available is what matters there. MVS, who's been tearing it up for the Saints, he's got the Giants, 69% available. I know, it's insane. And Brandon Cooks, who had a decent return from an injury stint against the Bengals, he's 90% available. The Bengals defense can't stop anyone.
Cooks had a 19% target share in his first game back last week. They're playing Cincinnati, who's obviously, tough against wide receivers. Like, it's just a good matchup for the Dallas pass catchers as well. I want to talk about Parker Washington just for 1 second. I don't think that's a complete fluke. We talked about this, I think, a little bit yesterday, but when Christian Kirk was on the trade block, this was widely reported, Florio, Schefter, everyone was talking about the fact that the Jags wanted to move on from Christian Kirk. And then the week before the trade deadline, breaks his collarbone, he's out for the year, and so obviously he can't be traded. But one of the reasons why, I have this on good authority, one of the reasons why the Jaguars were looking to, obviously tough contract, but beyond that, is they have a ton of confidence in Parker Washington, who, whenever he's gotten an opportunity, has just sort of produced. You saw that this past weekend in a tough loss to the Houston Texans, where Parker Washington had this monster game, and he's had 3 career games. He's had only 3 career games where he's gotten some looks, right? 3 career games with a 15% or larger target share. In those 3 games, he's averaging over 16 fantasy points per game. And so, to your point, in the slot, clearly there's a connection there with Mac Jones. The assumption, as we sit here today, is that Mac Jones is going to start this week for the Jaguars. I actually think Mac Jones starts the rest of the year. I don't know why you bring Trevor Lawrence back after that hit.
In a lost season.
Lost season. It just, let the guy get healthy. That was just such a awful hit. But anyway, I have Parker Washington in a couple of dynasty leagues. I like the guy. I don't think last week was a fluke, is my point.
Let's move over to the quarterbacks for Waiver Wired, and here's the notable ones on a bye for Week 14. Absolutely brutal list. Lamar Jackson, QB1. Jaden Daniels, the top 5 quarterback. Bo Nix, a top 10 quarterback. Drake May, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, obviously guys that are more viable in 2 quarterback leagues, but still matter a lot here. This is a very, very tough list. If you are looking for someone, we start with Russell Wilson. He's got the Browns, who kept Bo Nix from a fantasy perspective in check last night, but Russ has been chucking it and has looked really, really good for the Steelers offense right now, Matthew. He's 65% available.
Yeah, he is. You think about that first matchup against the Browns, he averaged almost 10 yards per attempt. Browns allowing a league-high 13 yards per completion this season. Honestly, the Browns defense didn't – I know Bo Nix threw the 2 picks, and they limited him somewhat. Yeah. It wasn't a massive fantasy day for Bo Nix, and we'll get into that game in a second. But also, Bo Nix missed some throws. And
they're vulnerable on the back end.
Huh?
They're a vulnerable defense on the back end.
They are very vulnerable in the back end. You saw Denzel Ward leave that game late with an injury. We don't know the status there. Browns will be traveling on a short week. This game is at Pittsburgh, at home at Pittsburgh. So, yeah, I do think Russell Wilson going against a Browns defense that's 27th against the pass over the last 4 weeks is a viable streamer this week. He's available in 65% of Yahoo leagues.
Yeah, the Browns, the thing with their defense is that if Myles Garrett doesn't get home,
right.
And last night Myles Garrett's beating his man in half a second, and still Bo Nix is completing 13-yard passes there because Martin Emerson Jr. can't hold up in coverage. It's really just Garrett and Ward at the moment, and outside of those 2 guys, it's a very exploitable defense.
In the same game, Jameis Winston makes the list for us. 85% available. You want to talk about a guy that absolutely throws it. This is who he is. You mentioned it too. The Steelers aren't great at corner. This could be another game for Jameis in a throw script.
Yeah, what are you
about? I was just going to say that I've already started a petition that I'm sending to Commissioner Goodell that Jameis Winston has to start every primetime game. I don't care. He's all-time quarterback.
It's
he should just be
watch TV.
Yeah,
pre-game, during the game, post-game.
I'm praying for the Lord to deliver me from pick sixes. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And what's even crazier is, by the way, I totally believe him. Yeah. I believe that Jameis Winston got down on his hands and knees and say, oh dear heaven, farther art there in heaven, please deliver me from pick sixes. I believe he did that as well. I'm not particularly religious, as you can tell, but I'm just saying, I think he got down there and and said whatever prayer he needed to say. I truly believe he did that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But look, for our purposes on Earth, Jameis is just going to continue to chug it. As we mentioned before, they cannot run the ball. It's hard to watch Nick Chubb at the moment, despite him scoring some feel-good touchdowns. He just can't get anything going on the ground. So they have to throw. The defense isn't very good overall, so they're just going to be in these throw scripts. And Jameis, for all his sins, of his big 6 sins, he can put up massive, massive yards. And he did it against the Broncos defense that's been awesome all year, and he threw for basically 500 yards. So I think this is just going to continue to be the show. This is Flacco 2.0 from last year was the fantasy.
1,000%. Since taking over as the starter in Week 8, he's the 5th best quarterback in fantasy on a points per game basis. It's not always pretty, right? But it's better from a fantasy perspective than it is from a real life perspective. But I mean, he's the second coming of Fitzmagic.
He's the volume king at quarterback.
He is the volume king as well. And you're perfectly right. Again, Stefanski's offense is built for this. It's just Watson was so unbelievably brutal that they never got there. But Flacco was a league winner last year. Winston absolutely can be down the stretch this year as well.
Yep.
Will Levis, our final quarterback here. He's 88% available. He's got the great matchup against Jacksonville, Matthew. That's what matters most. And he threw 2 touchdowns last week. The rushing attempts were down, but
he's looked better. Similar to Bryce Young, he has looked better.
A little more in control.
A little more in control, making some nice throws as well. No team allows more fantasy points to quarterbacks than the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so since he returned as the starter, Will Levis, he's averaging almost 17 fantasy points per game. He's got multiple touchdown passes in 3 of the 4 games. He gets you a little bit of production with his legs as well. So again, in a week with 6 teams on a bye, 6 legitimate starting quarterbacks in fantasy on a bye, I think Will Levis is certainly an option this week. He's out there 88% of leagues.
2 deep league ads. They're streamers at quarterback. Aidan O'Connell, because he's got the Bucs. The Bucs secondary has just been brutal this year. That's great news for the Raiders.
And
offense.
O'Connell put up nice fantasy numbers against the Chiefs on Friday. He really did.
Could have won that game.
They should have won
obviously.
that game.
Cooper Rush against the Bengals. Another same story. The Bengals defense can't stop anyone. Cooper Rush is getting a little bit more comfortable filling in this Dallas offense.
Yeah, both these guys, as we mentioned, with super favorable matchups. O'Connell in particular, the level that he showed against the Chiefs, and just his ability to just feed Brock Bowers in a way that Gardner Minshew hasn't to the same extent. Super favorable for Aidan O'Connell. Very viable streamer.
All right, tight ends, and sad news to kick this one off that we hinted at. Hunter Henry's on a bye this week. The Hunter Henry run of being the guy to claim and stream is over. And we'll start with the Roto-World player news, though, on that front, because if you are here looking for a tight end, there's a chance it's because Eagles tight end Dallas Goedert is out. He has a knee injury, could be a candidate for the short-term IR. Our first option is Will Dissly. Unfortunately, Matthew, Will Dissly coming off a week where he has the goose egg, but he's 58% available. He's got the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Chargers should be throwing a lot against Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, and when they're throwing, they should be throwing to Will Dissly, right? No team allows more receiving yards to tight ends this year than the Kansas City Chiefs. They allow 6.7 receptions per game to opposing tight ends. And so, especially when you think about the fact that Ladd McConkey may not be in this game or may be less than 100%, and you're talking about the middle of the field is somewhere where you want to attack if you're the Chargers against Kansas City, Will Dissly should be busy on Sunday night. It's worth noting that, yes, goose egg last week, but Justin Herbert had, weirdly, and we thought Herbert was going to have a big game, but Herbert just had a bad day at the office all around. McConkey was the only thing that was sort of working for the Chargers in the passing game. I think he'll be better against the Chiefs. He has to be better. This is a big game for the Chargers in that division as well. So I think Herbert will be better, and I do think Dissly will be a part of that.
In the same game, Jay, Noah Gray, of course, against the Chargers on Sunday Night Football, who's not just a guy when Kelsey's banged up or limiting snaps. He's out there getting targets.
Yeah, he is. And he's had 15 targets across the past 3 weeks, 4 touchdowns. That's a little bit fluky, but this kind of down season for Travis Kelce has just coincided with the rise of Noah Gray. So if you're desperate for an option at tight end, certainly can do worse than Noah Gray.
Our last
that sounds like a bad sci-fi movie, by the way, The Rise of Noah Gray.
The Rise of Noah Gray.
Yeah, that sounds like something you see.
It was written by Isaac Asimov.
Yeah, pretty much.
Our last one, a favorite of yours, Matthew. Juwan Johnson against the Giants. The
Still has his championship
the
ring
savior
from last
of
year.
Live at Noon on the Cock.
Yeah.
Juwan Johnson, he's 97% available. Taysom Hill out for the season with a torn ACL, unfortunately.
Yeah, by the way, and that's the point, right? Taysom Hill's out for the season. And, you look around at the Saints, who else do they have?
MVS.
Honestly, it is. It's MVS, it's Alvin Kamara, and it will be Juwan Johnson, who had a 20% target share last week, gets the Giants this week. Now, I will say, for all the struggles the Giants have had, they actually play the tight end pretty well this year.
Yeah.
But Juwan Johnson, always a threat to score. And so, by the way, Theo Johnson also banged up. Speaking of tight ends, he's on the IR, the Giants starting tight end. So Juwan Johnson he's a touchdown-dependent tight end, but then again, aren't they all?
Two tight ends that are based on injury. Dawson, Knox, of course, against the Rams. He's 92% available. We'll keep an eye on the status of Dalton Kincaid trying to work his way back. Luke Schoonmaker against the Bengals. If Jake Ferguson's still out, he's 90% available. So if you roster either Kincaid or Ferguson, potentially have these guys as insurance options on deck. If you need a defense, here's your options. The Titans against Jacksonville, a.k.a. against Mac Jones, 94% available. The Saints against the Giants. We'll see if that's Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito. And yes, the Cardinals, who have been much better in recent weeks on the defensive side of the ball. Plucky against a Seattle team that didn't have their best offensive day against the Jets. I mean, we know they pass over expected, but the Cardinals, they've been much better this year with not a ton of talent.
No. Like, similar to Dan Quinn, and I think because Washington and Jaden Daniels so exciting, and Washington's a big market, it's an East Coast market. Dan Quinn's gotten a ton of attention. Jonathan Gannon should be getting more attention for Coach of the Year. I don't think he really is, but again, that was another team that was sort of left for dead, and the Cardinals have a very legitimate shot at winning this division. Yep. Again, we talked about it. Like they've got the Panthers, they've got the Patriots, they got a divisional game this week, I think, right against Seattle. And then I think they play the Rams in Week 18. Yep. So they control their own destiny in their own way. Like, it would not shock me if they run 4 in a row. They run the table the rest of the way.
Yep, they've got very favorable tiebreakers in that division. If they beat the Seahawks, they will, I think, likely win the NFC West, which is pretty crazy for a team that, last year was a complete mess, started off the season 1-8 or whatever they did to get in this position and potentially host the playoff game is a great story.
Yep. If you need to make one of the additions we recommended today, here's your options to drop someone to make that addition. Kyle Pitts has been just dreadful for weeks now, 87% rostered. J.K. Dobbins, who's banged up. Josh Downs, who's still injured. Austin Eckler. Taysom Hill is out for the season with the torn ACL. Raheem Mostert's role has declined in Miami's offense. And Tyler Lockett, it's been the same for him in Seattle's offense as well when he's been healthy. We're going to take our first break. When we're back, we're recapping the Jameis Winston experience. Let the Lord deliver us from pick sixes. We're back after this.
Jerry, did you hear the boos every time you got the ball?
I heard it.
What
That was a lot of boos, huh?
It sounded like it.
What that means? There was a lot of catches too. It was high emotion, but you all, like I said before, you all want to beat the team that you used to play for, but came up short. Like I said, you got to find a way to finish, find a way to win.
It seemed to be kind of like here.
I loved it. They only boo you when they know there's something great in you.
That was Jerry Jeudy, who, listen, the Broncos get the win, 41-32, but the fantasy story of the night, Matthew, was Jerry Jeudy's return.
Unbelievable. He was amazing. I will say I'm a little annoyed by the narrative of, Jerry Jeudy showed them. I'm like, all the Broncos did was draft him high and then wait for production for year after year after year after year.
That's true.
In a situation where it's like, and I know people will say, well, he didn't have a great quarterback. True, but Courtland Sutton produced year after year after year with poor quarterback play, and Jerry Jeudy just never did. And so it's great to see him succeed with a new quarterback, a new system, whatever. The Browns have found a way to unlock Jerry Jeudy in a way the Broncos never did. But this whole they never believed in me. Jerry Jeudy got as many chances as possible. You know what I mean?
To be a star, right?
I mean,
you look at the road of him and CeeDee Lamb in that same draft. It went very differently for a long time.
No, 1,000%. But yes, in his return to Denver, Jerry Jeudy was nothing short of phenomenal. 9 for 235 and a touchdown. It's the most receiving yards by a player in a game against his former team in NFL history. Not fantasy relevant, but a little fun factoid for you. He's the third wide receiver this year with a 40-point game. Since Jameis Winston, this is the important part, since Jameis Winston became the starter, he's the second best wide receiver in fantasy. Obviously inflated quite a bit by this game, the 40-point game. But Jerry Jeudy's been unbelievable. He's averaging, I think this is probably the most telling stat, since Jameis Winston became the starter, Jerry Jeudy's averaging over 122 receiving yards a game. Again, somewhat inflated by the 235, but still, he's been great. He's been great, and it all came together for Jerry Jeudy last night.
It's from our buddy Roto Pat. 15.6%. Well, the first one, the final tally, 15.6% of Fifth-year pro Jerry Jeudy's career production has come in the 5 games since Jameis Winston took over as the Browns starter 36 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, he's been great, and I just, by the way, like there was like 70% of Yahoo leagues where he wasn't started. Can you imagine, like he's sitting on your bench, you needed a Monday Night Miracle, and it doesn't come through, and Judy's just sitting there racking up points on your bench?
You worried about Surtain, following him around?
Well, I don't understand why they didn't fully cover him, because Surtain was great when he was on Jeudy. Jeudy only had.
Here's the exact numbers. Obviously both former pro and college teammates. They've lined up against each other on 34 of 57 routes. Surtain allowed 2 receptions for 20 yards on 3 targets versus Jeudy, while the rest of the Broncos secondary allowed 7 receptions for 215 yards on 10 targets.
The vast majority of that being Levi Wallace getting absolutely cooked over and over again to the point where he got benched down the stretch. But, I mean, the thing with Jeudy, Connor, is that he's still only 25 years old.
Right.
He's he's taken 15th in the draft. To your point, Matthew, he didn't have great quarterback situations in Denver. There's a chance that the guy's 5th in the NFL in receiving yards.
But this is a guy that was thought of coming out of Alabama to be like an elite wide receiver prospect.
I remember when he got to Alabama, the first spring game he played in, everybody looked around and was like, this is the next great wide receiver of all time.
Yeah.
And he had a great career at Alabama, like you said.
Did.
He did really live up to the expectations for him as a recruit, which were insane. It just was a slow start throughout his NFL career. So I'm at 25 years old, I'm buying in. Like, I understand some of the Jameis inflation because Jameis was just throwing it. Cedric Tillman was out in this game, so the targets are going to be higher. But Jeudy can legitimately be a wide receiver.
And just game script, obviously. They were going back and forth as well. And it does feel weird. Like, I get it. The Broncos won the game, and they won it on 2 pick sixes. We'll talk about the defense there in a second. But still, there's a part of me that wants to say, like Vance Joseph, that's malpractice. That you didn't stick Surtain on Jeudy the entire game.
He's your best player, and he did his job.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. Here's one for you. Would you rather have Jeudy or Sutton the rest of the season?
Jeudy. I think just the ceiling is so high. Like, if you, again, fantasy is about hitting home runs. It's about winning and going all the way. And so Jerry Jeudy, just the ceiling that he has, like, he could be a top 3 wide receiver the rest of the way on this insane volume from Jameis. And if Jameis is not delivered from pick sixes, then you get the ball straight
doesn't
back.
matter.
It's fantastic. He's the ultimate fantasy weapon.
He really is. I think I might choose Sutton in that scenario just because I think more touchdown potential with him and more of a floor, right? This is now his 6th straight game with 14 or more fantasy points. Yeah. He's a top 4 wide receiver over the last 6 games as well. I prefer Bo Nix to Jameis Winston, just pure quarterback-wise. But Jameson does fling it.
That's the best part.
I mean, it is. It's sort of it's both guys are locked in fantasy. Both Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. Both guys are locked in fantasy starters for the fantasy playoffs, right? Like, just I don't care who they're playing. Like, you just got to do it. I don't think you'll see Jerry. This is probably Jerry Jeudy's best game of his career. But still, great day at the office for him as well.
Sutton rewarded you guys. Good call. Jay, you went on his longest reception, over 23.5 yards. He had a 32-yard catch. Matthew went receiving yards. He blew past that. He had 102. I'll always have the Devon Vile first quarter catch.
Yes.
And then we never saw him again.
Never saw
him. It was one of those where you put your feet up. You're like, this is going to be done in the second quarter.
Weird playing time game. Nick Chubb, like the usage on Nick Chubb was weird. Like he got a little bit of run in the first, had a couple good runs, got stuffed a lot, but then ends up getting a touchdown as well. I don't know that there's much takeaway here other than Jerome Ford is, I think, viable here. I get it. Chubb gets the touchdown and Ford doesn't, but he has now quietly led the Browns backfield in snaps 3 of the past 4 games. Double-digit touches in this one, 60 total yards. Feels like they felt better about Ford. And again, in games where just be chucking a lot, and I feel like that's going to be the way the Browns are moving forward. Jerome Ford is more their pass-catching running back than Nick Chubb, even though Nick Chubb, of course, caught the touchdown.
How about our drink-free candidate today? This is a deep cut.
So this is a deep cut. So Jaquan McMillan drinks free, and I'll tell you why. So that's the guy. He's the corner for the Broncos that got the 2nd pick 6. I put out on Monday. I do this every Monday, and I've done it for a decade. I was the first guy to do it, whatever. The Monday Night Miracle, right? And so I put out in my Monday Night Miracle what I needed was I was in a league where I needed to win, and I was playing. I was basically tied, and the guy I was playing had Nick Chubb and the Browns defense, and I had the Broncos defense. And I was just like, somehow I need the Broncos defense to outscore the Browns defense and Nick Chubb. And And then, Bo Nix throws that first pick. I'm like, oh, man. And then we get the pick six. The Broncos get that first pick six. I'm up by 4, and things are great. But then Nix throws another pick as well. And then Nick Chubb catches that touchdown. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm down. And the way the scoring in this league works is if the other team scores 35 points, it's -4. So I'm down 4 points. And they're driving, and I'm like, oh, just score. And if the Broncos get over 35, I'm going to win the game because the other guy's defense will go -4. And, of course, they kick the field goal. And I'm like, I'm done. Damn it, I can't believe Sean Payton didn't go for it on 4th and 1. I had hope for the whole game. You got to be kidding me here. Nick Chubb shouldn't have gotten that touchdown.
And the Lord delivered.
And then the second pick six, McMillan to the house, a second pick six, and I win. And if you think I'm obnoxious on this show, you should have seen me in that league. Oh, my God. Jaquan McMillan, you drink free today and every day. God bless you and your entire family.
Back to the futures after this. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the app and use promo code Berry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Crown is yours.
Back to the futures as we do every single Tuesday. What's an award you're looking at right now, Jay?
Looking at Quinyon Mitchell to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's the +150, second favorite behind Jared Verse. I think Quinyon should be the favorite here. He's helped revolutionize this Eagles defense. He takes the best opposing wide receiver every week. Hasn't given up a touchdown, only given up 321 yards total on the season. That's less than 27 per game.
How about a win total, Matthew?
I actually like the Rams to win the NFL West at +250. They're the third favorite after the Cardinals and the Seahawks, and I feel like all three should basically be equal. Look at their upcoming schedule. Home to the Bills this week. That's a tough one. But then they're at San Francisco, at the Jets, and they finish the season with home games against their two divisional rivals, the Cardinals and Seattle. Both those games in L.A. They're the more veteran team of any of these guys. New coach in Seattle, young team in Arizona. Give me the Rams at +250 to win the West.
I'm looking ahead to the NFL draft. The odds for the #1 overall pick on DraftKings, I don't like the favorite. That's Shedeur Sanders around +120. I like Travis Hunter at +300. He's the best player in the draft, just so much better than these quarterbacks.
There you go. Closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace out! Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.